did not come here alone.
Hi y'all, it's Evvie, and I am here today with another kind of short video. Place. I finally arrived at my destination, so I'm going to be stationary for a little while. And today I want to talk about, or I want to do a series of 4 videos that are lazy excuses for not diving in fully and supporting the movement for Black lives. And because I am a neurodivergent person and a person who identifies as disabled, I am going to start out with that. And so we're just going to dive right in. So I'm making this video right now. I'm also a little heated, so you'll probably see that come up. I am just really frustrated. And so I'm going to start with the very first excuse that I usually hear when folks are saying to me, you know, giving some excuse about why they're not fully and entirely diving into to supporting the movement for Black lives. And that is, it hasn't come up before, or I didn't know, or I wasn't prepared. We weren't prepared. And I'm just going to be calling out like the fact that I'm really directing this at content creators, at educators, and really, I think particularly today at businesses, both like small and mid-sized businesses, not necessarily talking about individual business owners by themselves on a small scale, but people who are providing services to either the general population or to a niche group. One thing that I've had come up multiple times in the past year is that I'm a very curious person. I love learning, and so I'm the sort of person who likes to sign up for things like workshops and trainings. And last year, I'll just tell one story because this company, we've already had an exchange and they responded really poorly, and so I don't feel particularly bad about naming them. And I also want to name this. And I also want to name this company because it is a Black-owned company, and the truth is that I just feel like as Black folks, we have to do better by each other. And so last year, as you can see, I have locks. I've had locks for 10 years, and I wanted to get certified as a loctician, and I had heard all these great things about Sisterlocks, and so I signed up for their class. I registered, I paid the price. This is actually when I was living in Seattle, and I showed up to the class during the part of the time last year. I wasn't able to walk unassisted because I had been in a car accident and I experienced a traumatic brain injury, and it affected my balance and my ability to stand and walk, and so I was using a cane. Now, believing that, you know, a loctician training, I would be mostly using my hand, didn't really think that I would need any sort of accommodations. I anticipated that we would be sitting down. I know a couple of people who are certified through Sisterlocks, including my mom, actually. And so no one told me anything about needing to particularly like look for disability accommodations. But before I did register for or after, I guess I should say, I registered for the class, I did look to see on their website where disability accommodations could be shared, and I couldn't find anything. And so I thought, okay, well, probably the kind of accommodations that I would need aren't something that is going to be required for this class. So for example, for me, when it comes to videos, subtitles are really helpful, and that's one of why I feel so strongly about getting subtitles on my videos, and I'm still working on that. And hopefully they will be on this video by the time I post it. But I wasn't anticipating needing that because it was a live class. And the other thing that I might have needed assistance with at that time was if we were going to be standing for long periods of time, just to have some other way that I could participate in the class without needing to stand up for an extended period of time, because at that time it was really hard for me to stand for even more than like, you know, 2 to 3 minutes. So I showed up at the class. with my cane because I needed to. The first thing I encountered was that the parking situation was really terrible because there was nothing that was close, and so I ended up having to park really far away and then walk to the location where the class was, and they hadn't notified us about the parking beforehand. They hadn't told us that the parking was that there was going to be paid parking at the location, and so that happened, and I ended up being late to the class because I didn't plan to have to walk for half an hour, which, you know, for another person it may have only taken them about 5 minutes, but I had to walk really slow because I was just having trouble walking at the time. And so I ended up showing up to the class late, and I did share why, but it didn't seem like the teachers really cared about that. And then once I was in the class, there were all of these handwritten notes that they were expecting us to take. And the first day, I feel like, I mean, I don't think I'm exaggerating to say it was somewhere in excess of like 7 to 10 pages of handwritten notes. And so what I asked was if I could just take a picture of the notes that they were writing on the board, because what they were doing was writing on like these giant sticky notes, and then they were telling us that we needed to ourselves handwrite the notes for our own record. And these were notes that were going to be on the test that were at the end of the course, so it was really important that we wrote things down. And unfortunately, as a person who's I don't want to say unfortunately, scrap unfortunately, as a person who's neurodivergent, taking notes and listening at the same time is really challenging for me. It's actually impossible. I'm not able to do it. And so an accommodation I might ask for in a class where there's a lot of notes is to have assistance with note taking, whether that be getting a copy of the outline of the course beforehand so that I could just jot down things here and there, but that I didn't have to write most of the things that the teacher or whatever, you know, whoever was presenting in the facilitator or the teacher was sharing. And I asked about that, and I even asked if I could take pictures first, and they told me no. And then second, I asked folks around me if they would be willing to share their notes with me, and the person who was leading the course actually stopped somebody from taking notes from me the second day and told me that if I wasn't able to write the notes myself, then I didn't belong in that class. And so at that point, it was really humiliating because they said this to me in front of everyone, and they actually accused me of being disruptive in the class for asking for accommodations, even though it wasn't made clear beforehand, so I didn't know that that was an accommodation that I would need, and sometimes that happens. But the person in the class just got so angry and frustrated that I was asking for accommodations, and I guess they perceived it as me asking for special treatment or being lazy. And so after lunch on the second day of the class, they waited until I returned back to the course, and they, in front of a course, I think there were about 20 people in the class, they publicly asked me to leave. They asked me to leave the course. They said I was being disruptive. They searched my bag in front of everyone in the course as if I was trying to steal the materials. They made me leave the notes, and keep in mind that I had paid for this course. It was about a little over $1,400 for the course, and I had paid the price. So I had paid the same price as everyone else in the course and was prepared to be in that training, had actually taken days off work to be in the training, and they kicked me out of the course for being disabled. And I contacted Sisterlocks. My mom contacted Sisterlocks after that, and they did end up eventually refunding my money because I threatened to pursue legal action if they didn't. And I talked to the supervisor of the person who was leading the course, who actually was the person who got on the phone and told me that I had to leave the course because I didn't disclose my disability before I was in the course, which isn't something it's not like they indicated that on the website that the course wasn't open to people with disabilities, because probably that would be against the law, and so they wouldn't be able to advertise that. But what they did do was make sure that once I showed up and they saw that I was disabled, that I was with a cane, and that I asked for extra support, that they told me that it was disruptive, like just my presence as a disabled person was disruptive in the course, and that they didn't want me in the course anymore because I was impacting the learning of other students. Never mind my learning. So that was a really humiliating experience. Before that, had really been all about, I'm really all about like black hair, like being natural, and us just like honoring and loving the way that our hair grows out of our scalps. And I liked Sisterlocks because I saw that as part of what their platform is as well. But the excuse that was made when I asked the question about what was so upsetting about me being in the course is that, that that they weren't prepared for me to be in the course, and that I was asking for special treatment, and that was creating an undue burden on the teachers and the students. There were 2 teachers, so on the 2 teacher facilitators and on the other students who had offered to support me was sharing their notes. They felt like if I needed extra support, that I needed to pay for that support. And so what I was told by Sisterlocks was that in order to get accommodations with them, I would need to actually pay twice. I would need to pay for myself to attend the course, and I would need to pay for an assistance person for myself to attend the course who wasn't going to be certified but needed to pay the full amount of the course in order just to take notes for me, since they were getting access to copyrighted information. So I'm sure any one of you who have any idea about disability accommodations or the ADA in the US know that there's so many levels of things that are both, unethical about that, but also against the law. And but really what I'm getting at here is, they were saying that this hasn't come up before, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this company has been around for 20 something years. Like, how is it that disability and accommodations for a neurodivergent person hasn't come up before? I also learned from some other people who have been in the training course for them before that the way that the teachers were teaching that particular course isn't typical, that wasn't their experience, that they didn't remember having to take, more than 10 pages of notes every day, handwritten notes in the course in order to get the information to pass the class and to get their certification. So it seemed like that teacher also was singling me out and just had some particular issues with disabled people themselves that they hadn't dealt with, and then just took it out on me because my presence was bringing something up for them. But here's the thing, y'all. Disabled people have been around the whole time. Like, even before the disability rights movement really got started around the time of the civil rights movement in the United States, it's not like disabled people didn't exist before then. It's not like we've just come out of nowhere. We've been here the whole time. And so that excuse that, it hasn't come up before, or that you just didn't know, that's just a lazy excuse. I personally believe, as a business owner myself, that if you're providing a service, that disability accommodations for the people that you're providing services to, or that you're teaching to, or whatever, that's just a cost of doing business. Because the reality is that we're here, and Black people who are disabled have existed the whole time that Black people have existed, which is pretty much forever since humans have existed. And it shouldn't be that Black disabled people are an afterthought. So this is a Black business. Obviously, they're catering to Black people, but for some reason, the fact that someone might be Black and disabled for 20-something years just never occurred to them. And that is a function of privilege. It's a function of ableism, and ultimately ableism ties back to white supremacy because it is putting forward a certain body or a certain brain or a certain culture that is the norm. Remember, we talked about the normal curve in a previous video. So putting that forward as a norm and saying, we're going to make this service or whatever for this central, there's the normal curve, and we're going to make it for this group of people. And remember, the people who have created the concept of normal in American culture are Western medicine and science, which are deeply based in white supremacy, which I will talk about in another video and go into more in depth. But I just wanted to name that as, like, if you're a content creator, if you own a business, if you're providing services to people, especially if it's something like an educational service or an in-person class, an online course, that in your preparation, like making it accessible to people who are disabled is a cost of business. It is something that needs to be thought about beforehand. And if you're not doing that, then you're not fully supporting the movement for Black lives, because Black people are disabled and Black people are neurodivergent, and you can't be supporting my life if you're not supporting accessibility for me. So I'm really curious what folks have to say about this. I know I've named a company, and that probably will upset some folks, but this happened very publicly. It happened in front of about 20 or 30 people, and so it's not a secret. It wasn't something that happened behind closed doors. I already approached the company about it, and they weren't really willing to do anything except for to refund my money. They weren't even willing to talk with me about how they could try to make their courses more accessible. And the truth is that we all don't know everything. And so if you encounter a situation, or you're thinking through accessibility and you're realizing that you don't know a whole lot about that, then hire a disability consultant or hire an accessibility consultant to find out where are the weaknesses, like where are the places that are inaccessible in your business, and make sure that you're investing that money and that time and that energy to make your service as accessible, because otherwise, not only are you missing out on a whole demographic of people that you could be serving, so ultimately, as far as capitalism goes, you're losing money, you're also going to end up alienating people who have seen your services presented in one way, and then if there are surprise things that happen and then you're not willing to provide or even to be open to accommodating them by, for example, maybe giving them extra time, maybe providing some form of refund, even if it's not a full refund, but just like, hey, I realize you couldn't fully access this service that you paid for, here's some of your money back. Also, I'm going to consult with somebody about how I can make sure this doesn't happen again for someone else, or maybe that person is a consultant themselves, and since they are already familiar with what could be helpful for you, you could hire that person. There are so many different ways that you could get creative with creating an accessible program, or creating an accessible workshop, or creating accessible services. But if you're not doing that and you're getting angry at disabled people who are notifying you of ways that the services or the learnings that you're providing aren't accessible, that's ableism. And ableism, again, Black people are disabled. Black people are neurodivergent. And so it is tied to the movement for Black lives, because until all of us are free, none of us are free. And you can't, there is no average demographic of Black people that you could be aiming your services at and say that, it's not anti-Blackness to have overt or covert ableism coming through your business, or doing things like kicking disabled people out of programs because they've asked for accommodations, because ultimately that is anti-Blackness, because you're doing it against Black people. And here's the thing, it's I'm on the side of these companies. I want to see Black businesses thrive. Speaking of Black businesses, if you're noticing my background, this was a gift from my bestie Maria, who's been a wonderful friend. We've been friends for over a decade, and so this was my birthday gift. She knows me really well and knew that I would love this, and the company who made this is a Black-owned business, and I'm holding them up here. I'm going to post a link to this person's Instagram in the description, so that you can, if you love this shirt, there are others that this person makes. It's beautiful, great quality, and I love that it's really directed at Black people and talking about, you know, our folks weren't free in 1776, so July 4th isn't for us. But if we're going to be celebrating independence, we're going to be celebrating it on Juneteenth. So I am fully, as a Black business owner, fully in support of Black businesses. But as I also have some pretty high expectations because we experience oppression on a regular basis. We know what it's like to be marginalized and to feel left out and to encounter goods and services and trainings that clearly people who created them weren't thinking about Black folks. But the thing is, Black folks are also disabled. So if you're thinking about Black people, that means you also have to think about Black disabled people. You need to be thinking about Black neurodivergent people. You need to be thinking about Black, queer, and trans people, and how to make sure that your services are accessible for us. And so ultimately, that is a cost of doing business. This is what I believe, and I'm really curious to hear and know what you all think, both about what you think of, what you think about the experience that I had with Sisterlocks and how they handled it, maybe how I could have advocated for myself better. What I ended up doing was I ended up just being so humiliated that I left. I didn't really make a big scene. I was just, because they did it in front of so many people, I was just so humiliated. I just packed up my things and I left, and I ended up crying in my car, and I think I called my mom and my partner at the time and was telling them about what happened because I just was so dumbfounded. I just couldn't believe that that this Black business that was saying that, they're trying to create ways for Black folks to create income and love our hair would have someone who's clearly in support of natural Black hair, of embracing our natural hair texture and wearing Black hairstyles, who was there to learn to become a loctician, that they would then kick me out of the class in such a public and humiliating way, and then blame me for causing a disruption in the class because I asked for accommodations. I mean, yeah, I think I probably still need to do some processing about it because I'm feeling some anger come up in me even just talking about it. But the thing is, this is one experience that I've had. I've had this come up twice just in the past week with other organizations where they're just like, it hasn't come up before. And I'm like, well, how has disability accommodation never come up in the entire lifetime of your business unless people are naming things? Like if you're seeing people fall behind in the course that you're teaching, maybe reach out to them and find out what's going on, because it probably has something to do with accessibility. But what I've seen instead is that folks get blamed for either not being committed or not trying hard enough, which was actually another thing that the Sisterlocks teacher told me, that I just needed to try harder to keep up, as if that my disability was a choice, or my neurodivergence was a choice. So things like that, just don't ever tell a disabled person or a neurodivergent person that they're not trying hard enough. It's a lazy excuse, y'all. I don't know any other way to say that. It's disabled people have been here. We're going to continue to be here. Disabled people are doing amazing things in the world. This video is a little longer. I am frustrated, and I wanted to be able to tell this story because I think it's something that is getting left out of the movement for Black lives and isn't getting talked about enough. And I am the sort of person where if I see that there's a hole or a weakness in the advocacy and social justice movement, then we need to bring it up and talk about it so that we can fix it. So that's my purpose in doing this video. Also, if you're a Black business owner and you want to either send me things or want to send me links to your products so that I can share about Black businesses, that's something that I want to do. In sharing about neurodivergence is support Black people being able to support ourselves. So please share about your Black business. Please look up this business and Creatiff by Tiffany, and support these Black-owned businesses. If you need t-shirts, it's summertime, it's hot. wonderful, wonderful things. So, and also let's hold our Black businesses accountable. It's like being a Black business owner doesn't mean that you're exempt from needing to accommodate your customers and to follow the rules of the ADA, both on principle because it's the law, but also just like if you're supporting Black people, support all Black people, not just able-bodied, neurotypical Black people. Thank you for watching. I'm really excited to hear what thoughts and ideas that you all have about this particular topic, and keep subscribed so that you can see the next 4 videos that I'm going to make on lazy excuses for not fully diving in and supporting the movement for Black lives. Bye.
If you listen, you can hear them in my soul.